Alright, Victorum Gaming fans and Victory at Sea fans, we're back and we're covering more of the game today. We're going to take a look at the different phases of the game, and real briefly we have the initiative phase, movement phase, gunnery phase, and then the end phase or cleanup phase. And initiative in this game works pretty simply. So, as it says here, use to resolve any actions that don't require players to make any choices and decide who has the initiative for the turn. In other words, who has gained a position of tactical advantage. So it's real simple. So both players will roll a d10, and tie is re-rolled. So the player that has one initiative will claim the initiative token, and basically there's a couple of things that happen with that. We'll cover that in just a second. Then the movement phase, and in this game basically everyone will move all of their ships, both players will alternate. Then players will go through the gunnery phase and alternate again, and then finally in the end phase you'll basically, as it says, tidy up the battlefield, and that's where you'll try to attempt to repair damage and things like that. So with the initiative phase here first, so the player who wins initiative will claim that token, as it says, but then the other player will be forced to move one of their ships first. And then during the gunnery phase, the player who won initiative will actually get to shoot first. So there's two effects basically off of winning initiative there. So forcing the opponent to move first, which is generally can be good, just to force them to activate early. But on the other hand, in certain turns you may actually want to lose initiative, just depending on which ship is going to be where, and so on and so forth. So the winner will still get to shoot first, but that may not be as critical just in certain situations there. But by and large, you probably do want to win initiative. With that being said, movement. The player who lost initiative nominates one of their vessels to move it. The opponent then chooses one of theirs and moves it, and so on and so forth. So you alternate, and again, nothing but movement for that entire phase. Gunnery is separate. Then in the gunnery phase, basically the player who won initiative will shoot first, and players will alternate through there, and we'll cover each of the phases in more detail here as we get through movement and gunnery. And then again in the end phase as far as cleanup is concerned. So stay tuned, we'll be right back with the movement phase. Alright, on to the movement phase. So a couple key things here. So again, players will alternate moving their ships, and here you can get an idea of the turning tool or movement tool, movement template, however you want to call it, for the game. And it's pretty neat. So most things in the game will go off of using the bridge basically as a reference point, and then your turn up to basically 45 degrees. There's certain abilities that can let you turn faster and things like that, but nonetheless, pretty handy tool. Has an arc here as well, and then basically a 4-inch section here. So key things, as it says up here in this initial paragraph, so each ship can only move once every turn, and you can't skip nominating or using ships to activate. So every ship will end up moving, and there's just no way around that, at least not at the moment. So moving ships, so it's overall pretty simple. You have your flank speed stat when we looked at the ship stat cards, and you can move up to that many inches. However, there are some minimums basically. So unless the ship has its speed reduced to 0 due to damage, you always have to move at least 1 forward. So that is the absolute minimum. And then if you want to turn, you basically have to go at least 2 inches forward before you can turn. So you can turn multiple times a turn, but each time you're going to have to go at least 2 inches forward. Now again, there's special abilities that will let you make tighter turns, faster turns, things like that. But for now, that is the basics of turning. So, and with that, as it says here, ships basically can't end up on top of each other, pretty common sense. And the way to resolve that, at least here, is basically to move the ship onto one or the other side. Now, it could be a little bit clearer here as to which side it really should end up on, but I would say, if your final distance would take you more than half the ship's length, probably put it further on the other side of the ship. And if it's less than that, just right before. But that's something that hopefully will get clarified in the full set of rules there. What that does seem to indicate, though, is that there's not really like collisions in the game or ramming, which hopefully would be like some sort of act of desperation. But at least as far as the basic movement is concerned, that doesn't seem to apply here. So Orders, like I said, will complicate things, and that will allow you to make like tighter turns and other tougher maneuvers. But as far as just the basics go, that's about it. And the tool will really help you with just about everything. Again, some ships do move a little bit faster, but in a pinch, if you don't have an actual measuring device, this will work just fine. And again, minimum of one move total, and you do have to move at least 2 inches forward if you want to turn. And you can again turn as many times as you want. So that is basically movement in a nutshell for Victory at Sea. And then we'll be moving on to Gunnery next. All right, and we're on to the Gunnery phase, and this is basically the single biggest phase of the game as far as rules being dedicated to it, or at least so it seems for now. So once everybody is moved, then we're on to the actual Gunnery phase. And again, if you've won the initiative, you'll actually get to shoot first. So that can set up for some nasty situations there if you've maneuvered correctly, and then you know that you're going to be shooting first. You can definitely have your choice of targets. So a couple steps to follow, basically. So once the ship's been nominated to fire, you nominate targets for every weapon system, so you don't get to wait and see how some things do to then nominate additional targets and so on and so forth. Check fire arc and range for each weapon system, resolve the firing, and then resolve the damage. Pretty simple. So, nominating targets. For an attack to be successful, you have to basically meet the two conditions here. So, within the arc and range, basically. So, those are obvious conditions. So you must nominate a visible target for every weapon system you intend to fire before the attacks are made. And then key thing here, which I should point out, as the ship models themselves are only representational, they do not block line of sight, which is, and I know in a lot of other naval games and stuff like that, like big ships and things can block smaller ships and so on and so forth, but not in this game. So you won't really be screening any ships from damage and so on now. So just keep that in mind. That is a key feature there. And as we mentioned earlier, so pretty much everything will run off of the bridge in this game. So knowing where that is on your ship is, of course, handy, usually towards the front. But so you measure from the bridge, so that way you don't get any like advantages or disadvantages for the size and shape of your ship and stuff like that. So unless your ship has rules to the contrary, you may fire each weapon system only once during each turn, and every weapon system may be fired at a different target, so you're not stuck just unloading onto a target if you have multiple targets. The maximum visible range is 30 inches. Targets beyond that are over the horizon, which requires a special over the horizon attack, which is another cool option that you have there, and that brings in a whole other part of the game too. So speaking of that, so some guns are so powerful they can hurl that over the horizon or small landmasses. And again, these aren't going to be accurate by any means, but only stationary targets, either installations or on land or anchored ships, may be attacked beyond a range of 30, or if land lies between attacker and a target. In order to attack a specific target beyond 30, an observation flight is needed to needed to guide attacks onto that target. And then if the flight has been assigned to spot that specific target, then all ships in the fleet can attack that target, as long as it's within the weapon system's extreme range. So pretty powerful stuff there. And then making the attack, even with an observation flight to make the corrections and in perfect conditions, accuracy is at best poor, essentially. All attacks will have the number of attack dice they use halved, rounding down, and that's another key thing to sort of get used to in this game. Basically everything is more or less rounded down as opposed to up. And each attack requires a natural 6 to be rolled in order to hit the target. So, and they cannot be modified for any reason. So no other special rules or anything apply. So basically you're just going to be looking for natural 6s because you're hurling these shells just a ridiculous distance. Then you can split fire as well. So if a light gun or AA battery has more than one attack dice, then it may split its fire among multiple different targets. This is done when targets are being nominated, and the dice allocated to each target must be declared before the firing takes place. Other weapon systems may not split their fire and engage multiple targets in this way. All attack dice for main guns, torps, and bombs are at a single target. So makes sense. You can't really split shots from like a main battleship turret, but the small guns generally represent multiple large quantities of these small weapons. So it makes sense that you can split those apart a little bit. So pretty cool stuff there. Same thing for airplane attacks and anti-air attacks. And then torpedoes, which will be a big part of this game too. Each attack dice listed for a torpedo system represents a single torpedo, so you do have the option to fire some or all of the torpedoes at the designated target from that torpedo system. By firing only part of the weapon system's total attack dice, the player is choosing to hold the remainder in reserve for a later attack. However, if the torpedo system has slow loading, which is one of the special rules, a torpedo cannot be reloaded into that basically half-empty rack until all the torpedoes are fired during that round. Then, while each specific torpedo system cannot split its torpedoes between multiple targets, ships equipped with more than one torpedo weapon system, each system may direct each separate torpedo system at a different target. So, especially a lot of the destroyers will have anywhere from 2 to 3, maybe even 4 torpedo systems. The Mogami heavy cruisers have 2 systems on each side, which is really, really powerful in addition to all the guns it packs. So, very good cruiser. Then firing arcs is another part of shooting, of course. So you got fore, aft, port, and starboard. And as we discussed when we were looking at these ship stat cards, so basically you'll look at what arcs your turrets and stuff will have, and then kind of be able to nominate your targets from there. So there's some disadvantages and advantages for lining up a broadside, so you certainly get more of your guns to bear, but it also makes you easier to hit and so on. And if you're going fore or aft, obviously only those weapon systems might be able to be in line of sight, and so on and so forth. So there'll be a lot of little things to consider as far as tactics go. Weapon systems then. Main gun, so the main turreted weapons that make battleships famous. So they'll be basically nominated as such. Same thing with light guns. And as it might be kind of obvious, right, smaller ships might only have light guns. They're not going to have battleship-sized guns on destroyers. AA, which is another feature of most ships and is another sort of special part of the game dealing with aircraft. So the only defense a ship has against aircraft, anti-aircraft batteries may target any aircraft within range and will fire at the start of the gunnery phase before either player gets a chance to do anything else. So it's a sub-phase of the gunnery phase, so keep that in mind. The use of these weapons is described with the rules for aircraft, and again, we'll cover that in a separate video, just because there's a whole lot of stuff to deal with aircraft. Torpedoes, so mainly cruisers, destroyers, as well as some aircraft, basically attack ships below the waterline where the armor isn't so thick. So again, a lot of ships will have those. And bombs, generally by aircraft and designed to be dropped on the decks, so the vulnerable areas there. So again, that's just a little bit on that part of the gunnery phase. Then firing itself. So each weapon system will have a number of what are called attack dice, or AD. So there are a couple of acronyms in the game, so just it's a good idea to get those learned pretty quick. So AD will be attack dice, and for everyone that rolls a 4-up, you'll score a hit, and there are some key modifiers there, so let's take a look at those. If you manage to get to point blank range, and there's a sub rule to that, +1. If you are at short range, there's no modifiers, positive or negative. Long range is a -1, and extreme range is a -2. Hence, we mentioned earlier, you need 6s to hit at extreme range and really over the horizon. If you're shooting at a destroyer, destroyers have a little bit of a bonus. Regardless of what's going on, destroyers are a -1 to be hit. If the target is also fast moving, basically you move more than 6, so not 6 like just right at 6, so 7, 8, whatever, you're also -1 to hit. So generally destroyers are going to be at a -2 to hit, which will really mean you're needing to roll 6s. If for some reason the target is stationary, it's +1 to hit. If it's a large silhouette, so if you are in the target's port or starboard arc, you have a better shot of hitting them, so it's a +1 there. And if the weapon system is a torpedo, it's a -2, so it is a little bit rough to land torpedo hits. So you're going to want to line that up, and ideally short torpedoes at someone's broadside, just to make it a little bit easier for you to hit there. And point blank range would obviously be good too. So main guns can only target battleships, carriers, and cruisers, and civilian ships at point blank. They're too slow to chase destroyers, basically. Turn fast enough to hit destroyers. Light guns and AA batteries are able to track their targets more quickly and ignore the penalty for fast-moving targets. So that's pretty powerful stuff there too. So destroyers on destroyers will be a good way to do that, or the lighter systems on the bigger ships as well. Then on to damage. So basically, for every hit that you score, you got to see what damage happens. So each weapon has what's called a damage dice, DD, and that's the number of d6 you roll for every attack dice that successfully hit the target. The weapon's armor piercing rating is then added to that or subtracted from that. So a lot of the light guns, for example, have like a negative AP, so it's harder to punch through armor. Some of the bigger battleship guns will have a plus there because they're just so deadly, so they'll easily punch through armor and cause more damage, which is a good thing if you are the one dealing the damage. And then the numbers compared to the target's armor, and basically you subtract the armor from that. Here they basically just say, for each one that you exceed the armor score by, it's 1 point of damage dealt, but really you can just subtract their armor. And then that would obviously result in however much hull points that you've dealt there, so the reduction there. Each damage dice that rolls natural 1 is an automatic deflection, so that's actually pretty cool. So ones will basically just bounce. So even main battleship gun on a destroyer might miraculously bounce off. So cool stuff there. And then every natural 6 is where the good stuff happens. So that's a chance to cause a crit. So for every natural 6 rolled, roll another d6. And if you roll a 4 up, then you've caused a crit in addition to anything else. And crits will cover on the next page here. And then once a ship's hull is reduced to 0, it's obviously destroyed and sunk and then removed from the game. Plunging Fire is another cool aspect here. Love that they brought this in. So shells fired at longer ranges by main and light guns don't travel in a flat line to their target. Instead, they're fired upwards and travel in an arc down to their target. So this means shells fired in that way don't usually strike the side armor. So long story short, main guns and light guns fired at a target within the long or extreme range gain +1 to the damage result. So that can help with some of the lighter guns at longer ranges being able to actually put some damage in, or just in general get extra damage, which is always good. Heavy armor. Some of the biggest and toughest ships afloat have an armor score of 7. So this means they can only be damaged by weapons that have a bonus added to their damage dice, such as Plunging Fire. So things like the Yamato, for example, very heavy armor. You're going to need ways to modify the damage that you can deal to hope to deal damage to these big beasts. Crippled ships. Each ship, as we looked at, has basically a rating pretty close to when it's it's getting low on hull points, where it's considered crippled, so it's not quite dead yet, but it's pretty much on its way there. But you can still fight a little bit. But crippled ships do get all kinds of penalties here. So the Northampton from the demo set here, which we've looked at before, has a hull score of 23.7, so 23 total hull before it sinks, but once it's at 7 or fewer, it's crippled. So a crippled ship will have its current flank speed reduced by half. Gains the lumbering trait, which we'll take a look at. Basically, it's harder to turn. The attack dice of the light guns, torpedoes, and AA battery systems will be halved, so just straight up halved, rounding down. And then D6 for every main gun and trait that the ship possesses, and on a 4-up, those are basically knocked out for the rest of the game. So pretty powerful stuff. So, and yeah, when they say, rest of the game, it means rest of the game. So you're not getting those back. So really, really nasty stuff. So then crits, which we'll just take a quick look at here, but I think we'll do a separate video just because there's so much information here for you guys. So critical hits, you have different areas that you can hit. So like the engines, weapons, crew, vital systems. Vital systems good if you can manage to do that. That's very bad for the enemy ship. And then it's very cool. So the crits by the different categories, the damage in those categories can start stacking up and basically representing that kind of damage is spreading. So like on the engine area, you might start with props damage, but you might end up with a fuel explosion eventually. But we go from rudder, turbine, fuel system, engine disabled, etc. So weapons areas, of course, will start depleting the enemy ship's weapons effectiveness. And like here, destroying a turret is just awesome. Obviously, it's not going to get repaired. Something like magazine explosion and multiple explosions, obviously really good. And the crew area, so just killing off crew is pretty good too. That makes it harder for them to then repair and so on and so forth. And as these accumulate, these can basically get somewhat out of control where they will continue to spread on their own because the damage is just like a fire might be spreading all over the ship and so on and so forth. So And then last but not least, there's a separate crit area. So if you manage to roll the vital systems, these are just absolutely nasty. So as you can kind of get from the titles here, destroy the bridge, the rudder's jammed, fire and engineering, catastrophic explosion is actually just a straight up, the ship is just dead, no matter where or how many hull points it had left. So theoretically, this is the one shot that you want here if you're trying to go up against something with a whole bunch of hull points. But like I said, we'll cover this in more detail in a separate video. But criticals are very fun in this game, and with criticals comes the end phase as well, and that's damage control. So, and those are the two things in order, basically. Damage control will happen first, and then escalation is a part of criticals as well. So, so again, the end phase, where we kind of wrap things up for the turn. During the end phase, each ship can use their damage control to attempt to repair damage sustained during a critical, sorry, not during, but to a single critical area. The player who won the initiative phase this turn attempts this for all of their ships first, followed by the other player's ships. So again, another important aspect of winning initiative. Sometimes if you can get your stuff repaired first, that'd be better. Each ship may only attempt one damage control repair a turn. Pick a critical area and then roll a d6 for every point that's above 4. The critical score of that area is reduced by 1 to a minimum of 0. So for example, a result of 6 reduces the critical score by 2. The ship no longer suffers the penalty associated with the old critical score. Any previous penalties associated with the higher scores are ignored. However, any increases to other critical areas or extra damage sustained by the old critical score remain. And locations with a critical score of 6 and critical hits to vital systems may never be repaired. So if things get that bad, there's just no hope for those things at that point. Escalation is a fun aspect of this. So some critical area penalties indicate the critical score there may suffer escalation. All critical areas subject to the escalation penalty must roll a d6. On a 4 or more, the critical score actually increases by 1. So that's, again, the crew's not being able to deal with whatever the damage is, and it actually spreads or gets worse. Any critical damage, any extra damage or penalty resulting from the new score is applied immediately. Remember to keep rolling for escalation every end phase until you basically get it under control to the point where escalation isn't something that happens anymore. So, a fun bit here, it might not happen very often, but it's possible for you to fail this roll and have the new damage from the escalation be enough to actually then sink your ship. So damage control is definitely going to be a very critical part of trying to save some of your ships before they bite the dust. And the escalation could even take you into crippled status. So there's definitely reason to try and keep your ships out of harm's way and keep the damage from spreading. So that is just a quick view of the phases for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll be back with, again, another video here. We'll cover criticals in more detail, and then the orders, aircraft, and plenty more for you guys. So hope you guys enjoyed this quick little look, and if you could, give us a like and then a subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.